Hey everyone, today we're going to start out with a still life. So, a still life, a work of art that shows inanimate objects from nature or man-made world. So, it gives an example such as fruit, flowers, dead game, vessels, baskets. I have some fake fruit and mannequin, some old clarinet pieces that I have found. And why is this so important, you might ask? Like, what's the importance of a still life? Well, the goal of a still life is the composition, right? The what we're looking at, and to direct the viewer's eye throughout the painting or the drawing, right? And lead them back towards what the artist thinks is important. So these are things that we're looking at today, and they're things that we're going to use in our drawing. So getting started, I'm going to kind of just turn my camera down a little bit so we won't see quite the top of it, but I am going to draw out a still life. So I always say it's important to put your name on your paper. My name is kind of going to be off the paper a little bit, but we're going to just kind of draw some of the composition. We might not get the whole thing, but it's like looking at different pieces. So sometimes an artist will start with this kind of shape and kind of building up. So I'm going to kind of start in that part of my shape, and I'm going to give just kind of an outline of where my pumpkin, and this pumpkin is a little bit different shape, off kilter right over here. And so I'm going to kind of just get some of those shapes into my actual place. And it's very light when you first start, because if you started out with your darkest anything, it's going to be really hard to erase. But as you go back, you can always add back in those shapes and kind of work at getting them darker. So I started off with getting that light shape just so that I knew I had the outline of my pumpkin, and then I can go back and I can draw those creases, and they're not straight, they're using curved lines, and actually kind of working my pumpkin and working my shapes around. I'm going to go back. Now, sometimes when you're drawing stuff, you know, when you start off, like I said, lighter, and then you can always build up. Then you're starting to get those shapes of your still life. So again, this one, I'm going to kind of start with this kind of ovally shape. It's kind of right here. And I'm going to work, kind of works behind my pumpkin after that. So it's going to overlap. A lot of impressionist artists like Paul Cézanne would do art like this. So again, I can get my case. My case kind of comes behind here, and I am going to have it so that my case, there's some kind of wrinkles in that case. But as my case comes across, and it actually has kind of, I'm just going to put some buckles down, but I'm not going to quite finish them. There's a line at the corner, kind of where it's getting started. So I'm just looking at some of those details, and I won't finalize everything yet, but it's just working on getting a still life kind of started and kind of getting those details. So I'm not going to spend as much time down here. I want to spend more time up in the actual part above it. So again, I've got my fruit here, and now I have this little mannequin, and so I'm going to look at those shapes. So right above here is where his shapes kind of start to go into the actual picture. So when I'm drawing out those shapes, I want to look around using your eye to see what's important, but also where you want to see your audience watching and looking around, making it interesting from different angles so that you can see different things. So my hand is going to go right up until the off the paper, so I'm just going to leave that. Then just a little bit over here, I have that pyramid shape coming up. It kind of ends back here. So you don't have to draw everything in a still life that's there, but getting kind of the main shapes. Here, get that outline right. Behind it is that apple. And sometimes it's really rough, and then that instrument's kind of coming out with some different shapes coming out of it. This is the outside of that case. And I'm missing one more thing I gotta draw. This line down. So there's more of the clarinet. How much of much of that in you are including is kind of up to you too, but I'll include. So sometimes you got to refine stuff too. So my edge of my case kind of going right off my paper, which is okay. So on this last little corner right here, I'm just going to kind of sketch in real quick. Just a little bit that the corner comes over. Corner kind of has a little bit of corner. So I'm going to go back and just kind of put in some of the rough estimate of the locks. So I'm just going to put the impression of the handle in there for now. And we'll see how many details we come back to, adding a little bit more of or less of. So far, this is kind of our rough estimate of where our artwork is. I'm going to leave out this front piece, so I'm just going to kind of sketch a line because I know that there's that instrument kind of has that hollow part. But that's kind of getting started with sketching out a still life in your art today. So after you get that, then we can go to the next step, but kind of looking at your eye, looking around the still life, and drawing it out onto your paper. So we've been talking about still lifes, and now I'm going to come back to my still life that we are working on right here, and we are going to go and add some of the colors. So I'm going to try to get as much of both in there as we can. So when I look at this, I can tell the light is coming from this angle where my hand is coming into the picture. I can tell that because this is lighter, this is darker. It does have some shadows and stuff on there. But those are things that are really going to be important when adding to the artwork. So I can go back in and I'm going to know that this pumpkin has more of a yellow tone, and around the creases it really has a pretty good yellow tone. The thing that's nice about oil pastels is that you can definitely mix really nice with them. So if I just go a little bit lighter in here, I can go back and I can mix some of those colors. So sometimes it's just rubbing over the color and mixing it so that it blends in the color. And if it does blends too much or mixes too much of the color out, you can always go back and overlap with the darker color again, or the lighter mix. Just for a little bit of shadowing, I'm going to put a little bit of kind of going and blending with my pencil, but also getting in those creases. And then I'm going to go back into my stem. So I'm going to find a green. But again, it has some of that light that's bouncing from the window into the actual picture. I must turn on the other pumpkin. This one has a lot more of the orange color. So some of this I'm going to kind of walk through a little bit of it, and then I'm going to start to speed or time lapse it so you guys can see kind of the process but a little bit faster. So mixing in these colors, blending them, overlapping. The black definitely gives just a little bit of where the creases are if you want a little more darker shadow. But you can also blend it more with the white. I gave it a little too much. And sometimes that happens in art. We go, ugh. So I'm going to start to put a little more time lapse into this, and we'll come back and look at more of our still life. So now I've got my still life done. I have got pretty much all I want in my picture. And yes, I could always go back and touch up some details or use my fingers to get some stuff, but I think pretty good overall. So I hope you guys have a great time creating a still life art. Check out this and other videos on my Let's Create with Mackie page. And as always, thank you for watching.